I need more time. I'm not ready yet.
Greetings.
Greetings. Well done.
Hello. Impressive. Look. 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 Look.
Greetings.
Hello. I'm impressed.
One, but thousands.
I need more spirit. must wait a moment. I'm low on spirit. I'm not ready yet. I'm out of spirit. I must wait a moment. I must wait a moment. I'm not ready yet.
Well done. I appreciate that.
Hello.
Impressive.
Thank you.
Greetings.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Not while I'm in town. My burden is too great.
The forge is ready for whatever you need. You can still use these. Come back if you need the forge.
I'm not ready yet. I must wait a moment. I must wait a moment.
Make something new with these.
Hey everyone, new off here. What is Kurast Undercity and how to access it? Here's a simple and clear guide that explains everything you need to know. Let's go. Kurast Undercity is a multi-level dungeon with unique bosses and mechanics. It's a great way to level up characters and targeted farming. Let's break it down. How to get to Kurast Undercity. Kurast Undercity is only available with the Vessel of Hatred expansion. To unlock it, you must reach level 15 and complete the priority quest, the Kurast Undercity.
Make something new with these. Stick to the trees and keep safe.
City location, located in Kurast Bazaar, Nahantu region. Once you enter Undercity, a timer starts counting down. However, while standing under the dome at the start of each floor, the timer pauses, giving you time to check the map and plan your route. You must collect attunement and extend the timer by defeating regular and elite enemies. If you choose the right world difficulty, clearing Undercity within the time limit should be manageable. The dungeon features different elite enemy types that grant extra seconds on the timer when defeated. For example, Lasser Afflicted, 8 seconds. Hell's Trumpet Afflicted, 11 seconds. Young Creator Afflicted, 23 seconds.
I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet.
take care now.
I must wait a moment. I must wait a moment. I must wait a moment. must wait a moment. I must wait a moment. I must wait a moment. I cannot do that here. I cannot salvage that.
Good materials here.
I need more spirit. I'm low on spirit. I must wait a moment. your judgment upon the damned! Aloha, spirit! must wait a moment. I need time to do that. I'm out of spirit. I must wait a moment. I must wait a moment. want to do that. It is done.
They're always back for.
I must wait a moment.
Now also think about this. This piece of shit's got no problem sending $40 billion of U.S. taxpayer dollars to our greatest allies' military, but when it comes to compensating some service member who's got both his legs blown off in combat, that's where Matt Walsh says, not on my dime, brother. Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and I gotta tell you guys, there's very, very rarely anything on social media that actually pisses me off, but today we got that for you, because it turns out over at the Daily Wire, shocker, Ben Shapiro's personal little whipping boy, Matt Walsh, decided to take time out of his very busy schedule of sitting in the hotel corner chair being the world's biggest cuck to make some pretty insane statements that he actually believes that the most fraud being committed in the United States is not by Somali daycare owners, it's by disabled veterans. Yes, theater kid Matt Walsh, who never served a day in his life, is now taking up the mantle of bringing down these disabled veteran fraudsters, because Matt believes just because you had your legs blown off in combat, if you're still able to work, you shouldn't be entitled to disabled benefits. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, helps the channel. Now let's jump into this and see what this pencil neck dork had to say about disabled veterans. So how'd this whole thing transpire? Yes, so it turns out Matt Walsh decided to attack Graham Plattner, senator candidate from Maine, not for being a Democrat, not for his policies, but Matt's big issue with Graham is that he's a 100% disabled veteran. Yes, Graham Plattner, who served 4 combat tours in the Marine Corps in Afghanistan and Iraq. Yes, Matt Walsh believes he is the biggest problem in this country. Let's take a watch.
So take, for example, the curious case of Graham Plattner, who's running for the Democrat Party's nomination for U.S. Senate in Maine. And Plattner is best known as the guy with the Nazi tattoo who supposedly didn't realize it was a Nazi tattoo. But what's interesting about Plattner is not the tattoo. What's interesting about him is that as of now, he has a disability rating of 100% from the Department of Veterans Affairs, which stems from his deployment to Afghanistan and Iraq. Now, publicly, Plattner has said that these benefits amount to roughly $5,000 a month, or about $60,000 a year. Now, wait a minute, you might say. 100% disability. How can someone who is 100% disabled, to the point that they receive a substantial amount of cash every year from the taxpayer, possibly serve as a U.S. senator?
Well, Matt Walsh, let me explain it to you, since you couldn't have taken 10 seconds out of your day to not embarrass yourself. The way military and VA disability compensation works is not stating that if you're 100% disabled, that means you're literally a vegetable. It's a rating scale for the math that works in compensating the veteran for the damage done to his mind, body, brain, and psychology during service, okay? So as a disabled veteran myself, let me explain some of the types of things you may be compensated for. Like I had both my shoulders completely reconstructed after a military freefall in Army Special Forces Halo jump. That left me having to have both of my biceps reattached to my pectoral muscles because my labrums were gone. Having to have my labrums rebuilt with metal rods and anchors. I had to have my AC joints opened up, reattached. My rotator cuffs had to be fixed as well. Multiple back surgeries, multiple knee surgeries, and that's just some basic orthopedic stuff I had to be done. And you know what that means? I have to deal with those injuries for the rest of my life. Yes, I can't go out and do the things that I wish I could do with my kids anymore because I paid the physical price, much like my brothers and sisters did across the entire military in their time, especially in the global war on terror. But this goes back to even the Vietnam War. Yes, my dad, who just had a stroke this year, has had multiple quadruple bypass surgeries on his heart, all due to Agent Orange. Most of his friends have all died from cancer at this point. So you're not only being compensated for the damage done to your mind, body, and brain, but for the typically decades that are taken off of your life as well as a combat veteran. And Matt Walsh, you've never served a fucking day in your life. What would you know? What would you know about what Graham Plattner has to deal with? Probably with pretty substantial PTSD from 4 combat deployments in the Marine Corps in Iraq and Afghanistan. You wouldn't have any fucking clue what veterans have to deal with. So why is Matt Walsh actually attacking Graham Plattner? Well, the answer is pretty easy when we look into it. Yes, let's head on over to APAC Tracker and see what we got. Oh, well, look at that. Graham Plattner, $0 from APAC. Very, very critical of our greatest ally. And we already know when Ben Shapiro cracks the whip, the best little Shabbos goy, Matt Walsh, jumps in line.
Matt Walsh, you're such a good little Shabbos goy.
No, I'm a man. I have a beard and I wear a flannel shirt. I'm a man.
But when the Jews crack the whip, get back to work, Matt Walsh. Get back to work. Do not criticize Israel.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Ben Shapiro.
And we'll start attacking who he's supposed to attack.
Like, what does the term 100% mean? Because when I hear that, I think, oh, totally disabled.
Yeah, because I just told you, you didn't do 10 seconds of research to actually look up what VA disability actually means. Now you've been enlightened.
Like, you are not able to do anything. And yet you can serve as a U.S. Senator?
Also, what is a U.S. Senator's job? To sit in a fucking chair and cast votes? Yeah, why don't you relax, guy?
But for that matter, he also continues to work as an oyster farmer and harbor master. How does he do that if he's 100% disabled?
Oh, Matt Walsh doesn't understand. How could somebody that's classified as disabled in the military still work? How could they do it? How could they have a job? Matt, do you know how many of my friends have blown off legs that are working? Yeah, it turns out they still want to have purpose in life. They still want to actually contribute to society, but they deal with very, very real fucking problems. And that little bit of disabled benefits that they get actually does help their family get by, because there's a lot of added expenses that you wouldn't realize that go into dealing with all of these psychological and physical injuries. And I'll show you one of our friends. So yes, Matt, this is a man named Nick the Machine Lavery, who most of my viewers are already going to know. But Matt, why don't you take a look at Nick here? You see, Nick is actually the first Green Beret with an above-the-knee amputation to not only continue to serve in the U.S. military, but also deploy back to war and combat. And so while you wouldn't understand this, Matt, because you never had the courage to sign on the dotted line and serve your nation like the people you're complaining about are, but it turns out there are men like this out here. Here's Nick. You gonna tell him he's not disabled, Matt? He shouldn't be getting his benefits because he can still be active? Because he can still find purpose, because he can still manage to work a job? He shouldn't be compensated for what's been done to his body? That's your take? And you know what's really poetic about Matt Walsh complaining about disabled veterans, especially global war on terror disabled veterans? Matt Walsh was born on June 18th, 1986, 1 month before me. And you know what demographic that puts him in American males? Yes, the demographic that could have fought the entire global war on terror. But did Matt Walsh sign up? Did Matt Walsh volunteer to step in the breach and defend his country? No, he didn't, did he? But he still has the fucking gall to complain about those who did.
If you're capable of becoming a U.S. Senator, and if you're capable of working on a boat for a living, then you are not 100% disabled, and you don't need $60,000 from the taxpayer on account of your disability, period.
Hey, pussy boy. Let me explain why the VA disability system has been changed to what it is now to make sure that veterans are being taken care of. Because what you had, especially during the Vietnam War, was all of those guys coming back basically getting no compensation whatsoever. And we left an entire generation of Vietnam veterans completely fucked. And we were still doing it to global war on terror veterans up until 2004. So what was happening is you would have service members, some of them 14, 15, 16, 17 years in the service, who would be downrange, get both their legs blown off by an IED, would come back, and you know what would happen? They would get about 20% disability. They would get removed from the military. They wouldn't even be retired because they didn't make it to 20 years. And we said, thanks for your service. Here's 30% disability. We know you don't have any legs anymore, but here's $1,000 a month to help you with your life. And it turns out, luckily, Congress changed a lot of this legislation and laws to make sure that disabled veterans actually are taken care of. when they come back from war. Yes, war, because this is also the other thing that's so hypocritical of Matt Walsh and his friends over at the Daily Wire, is those neocons are the first ones that are salivating, begging to send your sons and daughters to go die or get maimed in a foreign fucking war. Matt Walsh can't get ahead of himself fast enough to go put boots on the ground in another foreign country, but at the same time doesn't want to compensate those soldiers for the damage that's done to them when they come home from war. And so here's the thing. No, actually, America does do this system right. It turns out if we're going to send our young men and women to go fight and die in forever wars, then we as a society are actually pretty obligated to make sure that they're taken care of in the best way possible when they come home. And here's another thing for you, Matt Walsh. If you're complaining about veteran benefits, you know the recruiting station was open to everyone, especially you, because you were 18 in 2005, hadn't even had the second Battle of Fallujah yet. You could have signed up, but you didn't. And so anybody who's complaining about what veteran benefits are or what veterans are getting, again, go sign up. The recruiting office is literally open to everybody. Every U.S. citizen has the opportunity to walk in that door, serve their nation, and yes, be entitled to benefits afterwards. Now also think about this. This piece of shit's got no problem sending $40 billion of U.S. taxpayer dollars to our greatest allies' military, but when it comes to compensating some service member who's got both his legs blown off in combat, that's where Matt Walsh says, not on my dime, brother. And so here's my final message to you, Matt Walsh, you skinny, fat little chud dork. Until you actually do anything of value to serve this country, how about you keep veterans and disables veterans' names out of your f***ing mouth? That's going to do it for this one. Catch you on the next one.
Hey everyone, welcome to Q and Andy. Do I say welcome to Serve this Q and Andy? Do I say Q and Andy?
Served presents Q and Andy.
Served presents Q and Andy. How do I have a job, Mike? What is this?
This is our weekly, well, somewhat weekly. It won't happen during the slams, but this is our weekly fan Q and A.
With an attitude like that,
I know,
I'll tell you.
Jeez, oh Pete.
All right, we're going to talk about Iran again, but this is not about whether the United States should intervene militarily and help change the regime, as President Trump has been vowing to do, nor is it about whether the current government of Iran is a good government or a bad government, or one that Iranians should want or should want to change. That is entirely up to the Iranians. I'm not here to talk about whether the Iranian regime or Iranian government is a good or bad regime. There are very brutal regimes all throughout that region, including ones that the United States and Great Britain support and prop up. The Saudis, the Egyptians, the Emiratis that are at least as savage, and I would say more so than Iran. If you even tried to organize a single protest in Saudi Arabia or in Egypt, they would crush you, either by imprisoning you, torturing you, and likely killing you. So that's not the question either. The question I want to address is one of media propaganda about trying to lure the United States into intervening militarily in order to change the government of Iran. And specifically the propaganda that unsurprisingly is coming from CBS News, which, as you certainly know, was just purchased by the family of Larry Ellison, the Oracle billionaire, who is the largest single ever donor to the Friends of the IDF, a fanatical supporter of Israel. He bought Paramount and CBS News through his son, David Ellison, who is also as fanatical of a Zionist, and they put as editor-in-chief of CBS News, where she has constantly manipulated the news and censored the news and suppressed the news, one Barry Weiss, who also has her primary life cause being servitude toward Israel. And that was a big motive in why they bought these media properties, because they saw support in the United States for Israel unraveling. And they wanted to buy not just that property, but Larry Ellison is now the head of the consortium that's about to buy and control TikTok after the Congress voted to ban TikTok or force a sale to it on the grounds that it was allowing too much anti-Israel content. And they're also trying, the Ellison family is, to force Warner Brothers to sell itself, not to Netflix as it wants to, but instead to the Ellison family and Paramount, so they control all of its media properties, including CNN. So this is a very political operation, a very politicized gobbling up of media, social media and traditional media, with the goal of serving Israel. And the fact that most of the most extreme propaganda is coming from CBS News about Iran, about luring the United States into a war there, and nobody else, is what this is about. You can want the United States to intervene. You can think the Iranian government is the most savage ever on the planet, even though this is right near Saudi Arabia and the Emiratis and the Egyptians and a lot of other governments. That's irrelevant to this video. This video is about media lies, media propaganda, and how damaging it is, and our obligation, especially for me as a journalist, to object when I see it happening. We just saw it happen, just so it's fresh in your mind, when it came to Venezuela. After President Trump, rather abruptly, suddenly, without much groundwork laid, ordered the U.S. military to abduct President Maduro and take him back to New York, and what was, on military terms, a successful effort, Trump supporters caused to viralize all over the internet video of people celebrating that they falsely said, they lied, were Venezuelans in Venezuela celebrating the removal of Maduro and thanking Trump. And in each one of those cases where the video is viralized, they weren't in Venezuela, as was claimed. They were in Miami or other places in the United States or in Argentina or various communities in countries where Venezuelan exiles, Venezuelan dissidents, Venezuelan immigrants, who often have a much different view of Venezuela than the people who videos weren't meaningful. Doesn't mean they shouldn't have been shown, but there was no need to lie and say they were in Venezuela. And the Venezuelans inside Venezuela were so happy, were so celebratory. Why weren't there those sorts of videos in Venezuela? So no matter what you think of the Venezuela operation, you should be angry when people lie to you and propagandize a war by spreading false claims. No matter what you think of the war. That's how the United States has been lied into so many wars. We got lied into the war in Vietnam by being told that North Vietnamese had aggressively attacked our ships in the Gulf of Tonkin, which now even the U.S. Navy and U.S. military admit was an absolute fabrication and lie. Obviously, the lies that led to the invasion of Iraq. Nobody doubted Saddam Hussein was this evil dictator, but that wasn't enough. We were told he was on the market for nuclear weapons, developing chemical and biological weapons, had an alliance with Al-Qaeda, would likely pass it to them. All lies to justify the same in Libya about what Gaddafi was and what he was going to do. It is so commonplace that it's something we ought to combat, no matter your views on these individual wars and regime change operations and whether or not the United States should be the policeman of the world, even though Americans keep saying that they don't. Now, just to remind you how this all started, the prospect of U.S. intervention in the Iranian protests, Trump on Truth Social on the 2nd of January put a Truth Social post that said, quote, "If Iran shoots and violently kills peaceful protesters, which is their custom, the United States of America will come to their rescue. We are locked and loaded and ready to go. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump." Now, what makes that so odd is that it was one thing to bomb Iran by claiming we were doing so to get rid of their nuclear program, even though Tulsi Gabbard said they didn't have a nuclear weapons program. Because at least you could justify that as, oh, that's bombing to protect America and its national interests from the possibility that Iran, an adversarial power, would get a nuclear weapon. But threatening to intervene in Iran and bomb Iran because now we're the policemen of the world and we're going to punish governments that don't give rights to their protesters, that's completely antithetical to everything that Donald Trump and the MAGA movement said they believed in, and that Americans have been making very clear for a long time they don't want either. We don't mind governments that crush dissent and kill protesters. We give billions of dollars to Egypt, which does that. We give all kinds of intelligence and military weaponry to Saudi Arabia, which does that, and to the Emiratis, and to Jordan. and to Uganda and to Rwanda. And nobody ever objects. Nobody in the West says, oh, look at all this repression. We don't care about repression, except when it's a issue we can exploit to justify regime change in a government that doesn't do the U.S. bidding. That's the reality. Now, I don't know if this matters or not. Usually it doesn't matter what the American people think when it comes time to the U.S. wanting to start a war. But there's new polling from Quinnipiac. And I realize people can dismiss whatever polling that they want that they don't like. Yesterday, there was polling from YouGov and The Economist showing that a majority of Americans don't believe that the ICE killing in Minnesota was justified, believe that the ICE agent should be criminally investigated, even want to abolish ICE. And all I heard was, oh, YouGov is a left wing, this, that. Okay, now here's Quinnipiac. And this is what they report. Independents, Democrats, and Republicans think the U.S. should not get involved if protesters in Iran are killed while demonstrating against the Iranian government. And it's not even close. Independents are opposed to involvement in Iran by 80 to 11%, Democrats by 79 to 7%, and even Republicans by 53 to 35%. So apparently Americans mean what they've been saying, which is they don't want to keep intervening militarily and spending American resources, fixing other countries, intervening in other countries, controlling them. That we believe, Americans say, that our economics and our communities and our states and cities are falling apart. We don't have economic security for our children. We believe U.S. resources should be devoted to that instead. That's what Donald Trump ran on. And apparently people took it seriously, which is why they voted for him for that, and are continuing, unlike a lot of MAGA influencers and pundits who change their views the second they have to align with what Trump does. American citizens don't do that. They continue to say, no, we said this and this is what we want. But given that Trump committed the United States to bombing Iran, to intervening in Iran, if protesters are killed, anybody who is eager for the United States to go change the regime in Iran, and having the United States go change the regime in Iran has been the supreme wet dream of Israel and Netanyahu. The number one wish on the Christmas wish list of neocons and Israel loyalists. They've been craving this for 30 years. They've been trying to lure the United States to go militarily take out the government that they regard as most threatening to them. So if you're an Israel fanatic, like the people who control CBS News, David Ellison and Barry Weiss, you saw what President Trump said. If they kill protesters, we're going to go militarily intervene. So you have an interest in trying to convince Trump and everybody else that the Iranian government is killing shockingly high, unprecedented numbers of protesters. I have no doubt the Iranian government has killed protesters. Some of those protesters are violent and have been violent, burning a mosque, murdering agents of the Iranian state. And obviously, if the United States had nationwide riots funded and armed by a foreign government, as the Israeli media admits it's doing, think about what the U.S. government would do to such people who were throwing Molotov cocktails, were burning down churches, were murdering ICE and FBI agents. We just saw in Minnesota the entire conservative movement say, if you even remotely threaten an ICE agent, like drive your car roughly in their direction, not with the intent to kill, but with the possibility of hitting him, even if he's going 3-4 miles an hour and he can get out of the way, and he instead pumps bullets in her head, that's totally justified. So Israeli media is saying we've been organizing and funding and arming these Iranian protesters from the start. Mike Pompeo, the former Trump CIA director, said the Mossad is next to every Iranian protester. So it's not surprising that if there's an uprising that violent, funded by a government, foreign country that wants to take you down, you're going to be very repressive and violent. Any country would. But on top of that, the Iranians don't tolerate dissent. That is true. And I have no doubt they've killed innocent protesters, peaceful protesters. That's not in question. But that doesn't mean you get to just lie and invent claims. Like Saddam really was a bad guy. Like it was a bad government. If you were in his reach, you didn't want to be in the reach of Saddam Hussein. He was truly repressive. His son, especially Uday, was a psychopath. All of that was true. But it didn't justify the lies that we heard. Oh, he's trying to get nuclear weapons. He has biological weapons. He has an alliance with Al-Qaeda. Nothing justifies war propaganda that are based on lies or wild exaggerations. And yet, out of nowhere, CBS News reported something that absolutely no other news organization has even come close to reporting. And it's obviously designed, perfectly catered to try and lure Trump or force Trump into intervening militarily in Iran. Here's what CBS News claimed. Over 12,000 feared dead after Iran protests as video shows bodies lined up at the morgue. Quote, information trickling out of Iran on Tuesday suggests that a crackdown by authorities to end more than weeks of widespread anti-government protests has likely been far more deadly than activists outside the country have reported, with phone lines opening back up for calls from inside the public. Two sources, they have two sources, including both unnamed, including one inside Iran, wonder where the other source is, told CBS News on Tuesday that at least 12,000 and possibly as many as 20,000 people have been killed.
Come back if you need the fort.
Every other news organization is in the West is reporting at most 2,000, 3,000, which is a high number. Trump himself is saying the U.S. intelligence community has no idea. He's seen much lower numbers. CBS News, run by Israel fanatics, comes out with a number that is 4, 5, 6 times greater than almost anyone else is reporting. And suddenly that becomes gospel and fact all over the world. Everywhere you can go, you can find people saying Iran has killed 20,000 people and you want to let them go? You want to sit by? It just became fact overnight. Not even the 12,000 number, the 20,000 number. They purposely threw out that 20,000. It could be as high as a meaningless number. It could be as high as 50,000, as high as 460,000. So they purposely threw out 20,000, knowing that that number sounds even worse than 12,000, let alone the 2,000 and 3,000 that everyone else reported, and it became immediately fact. Here is Tony Dockapil, who has become the new CBS News anchor. And the reason Barry Weiss chose him, nobody knew who Tony Dockapil was. He was like this totally obscure cable person. He was on CBS's morning shows, married to Katie Tur, this MSNBC liberal. I mean, I work in journalism. I work in media. I follow this for a living. I had no idea who Tony Dockapil was until last year when Ta-Nehisi Coates released a book that was very critical of Israel and its occupation of the West Bank. And he went on CBS Morning News, and Tony Dockapil basically accused him of being a terrorist and said, God, your hatred for Israel is so extreme that it seems like this book could be the kind of scribbling one finds in the backpack of an extremist.
I must wait a moment.
Tony Dockapil's wife is Israeli. They lived in Israel for several years. Fanatical Israel supporter, as evidenced by that interview. Barry Weiss and the Free Press defended him vehemently, and so she gets there, and just like David Ellison makes her the CBS News editor-in-chief because he knows her devotion is to Israel, Barry Weiss picks someone who knows that his devotion is to Israel. Wife is Israeli. They lived in Israel. He proved with Ta-Nehisi Coates interview that he'll call anyone who doesn't support Israel a terrorist. He's now the face of the CBS News anchor. And even he and everybody else is very surprised. Tony Dockapil, no one even knows him. CBS News is already well behind in the ratings compared to the other two networks. Since Tony Dockapil took over, this last quarter of the last month of ratings has evaporated their audience further still. He's had all kinds of embarrassing moments. Did a big teleprompter screw up where he just froze, showing his amateurishness. He did an interview where he talked about growing up in Miami. I grew up in Miami. For some reason, he started crying and weeping because of like his love for South Florida. Because it reminds him of it. Who does that? Who weeps because they grew up in a place and then someone asks you, like, hey, where did you grow up? And you're like, I grew up in Miami. I love it so much. It reminds me of, I'm sorry. And it wasn't just like a little bit of tearing. It was like sustained, prolonged weeping. And I don't even mind. I don't have a problem with people showing emotion, with men crying public. I think that's healthy. I'm not someone who minds that. But like over this and like the histrionics. And so he's just become kind of like a laughing stock. And so they not only published this on their site, but they had Tony.
There are reports tonight out of Iran that at least 12,000 people and possibly as many as 20,000 have been killed in the regime's crackdown on anti-government protests. Elizabeth Palmer in London has the details.
There was intermittent cell service again today in Iran, and information is trickling out about thousands of protesters killed by security forces. Here you can see Tehrani's looking through bullet-riddled.
All right, so that's how the segment started. Reports say 12,000 Iranians have been killed and as many as 20,000, which is a very reckless and irresponsible way to report because we know exactly how that's going to be taken. And now 20,000 is the number that people cite as gospel. So that if you don't want to intervene in Iran, you're going to immediately hear 20,000 people they've killed. And you want to do nothing? Here is the only other entity that has reported this, and they're basically copying CBS News. It's called Iran International. It's a London-based, quote-unquote, media outlet organized by Saudi leader Mohammed bin Salman and financed and run by and organized by and owned by Saudis, who obviously see Iran as a great rival. Exclusive 12,000 killed in Iran crackdown as blackout deepens. And here is the editor of Iran International. His name is, you know what? I'm going to pull that up in a second. But I just want to show you this. This is The Guardian and many, many other news outlets that have reported on what Iran International really is, which is a Saudi propaganda outlet. Here's reporting from 2018, concern over the UK-based Iranian TV channel's links to Saudi Arabia. Exclusive, Iran International is funded by firm with ties to Prince Mohammed bin Salman. So it's a Saudi state media outlet. That is the only other entity reporting what Barry Weiss's CBS is reporting. Here's another article from 2018, Ofcom, which is the British regulatory agency, examining the TV network over interview praising attack on Iran. Saudi-linked Iran International TV gave airtime to supporter of assault that killed 24 at parade. So this is an Iranian outlet claiming they're for Iranians, and yet they constantly cheer aggression against Iran, murder in Iran, bombing of Iran. So everybody knows what that is. Now, here is the editor of this Iran International. And you see how closely this Saudi outlet worked with what in reality is Israeli state media, which is now called CBS News. His name is Mehdi Parpanchi. He says, quote, a source inside Iran who was able to call out told CBS News on Tuesday that activist groups working to compile a full death toll from the protests based on reports from medical officials across the country believe the toll was at least 12,000 and possibly as high as 20,000. Now, again, feel free to say, even if they killed one protester, that's enough. Who cares what the number is? If they killed 2,000, that's evil. Okay, you have fun arguing that. I'm simply saying that we shouldn't accept lies and wild exaggerations that are done to lure the United States into yet another Middle Eastern war for Israel. Even if you're in favor of it, you should be opposed to it. Just like I said to people, you can be in favor of what Trump did in Venezuela, but you should be infuriated that all these pro-Trump influencers lied and circulated videos they claimed were in Venezuela, none of which were in Venezuela. And they left it up to allow it to continue to viralize well after it was known that those were lies. Given how often we've been lied into wars, this should be offensive to everybody. Now, I just picked a couple of examples of people citing this as gospel. You can find it all over the place. Here is Y'all.
Wait a minute. ready yet. I'm not ready yet. I must wait a moment. I'm not ready yet. I must wait a moment. I'm out of spirit. I must wait a moment. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. It is done.
Lost and found and lost.
I cannot do that here.
I can break that down. There's that.
Greetings.